Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. There's a book out there called Catching Lightning in a Bottle. Fascinating look of how Merrill Lynch revolutionized the financial world. And it talks about the birth, nurturing growth, and untimely fall of one of the world's greatest companies. We are interviewing the author, Win Smith. He is someone who is intimately involved with the company for almost 3 decades, and his father was actually one of the founders of the original Merrill Lynch firm, and had his name on the list of names that was up there until they said, you know, this is going to be really hard from a branding perspective. Let's just take off all but 2 names. That's eventually what happens, isn't that right, Win?
Well, hi, Kevin. It's nice to be with you. You know, actually, they created a holding company that became Merrill Lynch and Company, but Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith always existed as the broker-dealer and still does as part of Bank of America. Well,
very cool, very cool. You were with the company for 28 years. What was your capacity during that time?
Well, you know, I started as an investment banker in the bullpen. I did a lot of things over the years. I ran a large part of the U.S. Retail sales force, and in the last 10 years, I was chairman of International and responsible for our business growth outside of the United States.
Mm-hmm. And you left in 2001 because you weren't happy with the way the company was going.
That's right. You know, a new CEO came in, Kevin, and it was a very, very tough moment. But, you know, I decided I just could not be part of the team. I didn't agree with the direction that it was going, and I thought I'd be hypocritical if I stayed. So it was a bitter moment, but I decided it was time to move on.
Yep, and you decided to tell the story, and it's very thorough, very complete. Tell us, kind of give us the let's start with the elevator speech, and we'll banter a little bit from that.
Sure. Well, you know, what I wanted to make sure that Merrill Lynch wasn't just remembered for the bad days of 2007 and 8 and the greed and the subprime problems, but people remember the great history that existed before, and that they could understand why the firm became great. And in my opinion, it became great because we had a set of values, a set of principles that created a culture that led to principled leadership. And while we made mistakes, we always had that North Star that we came back to. And unfortunately, that got eroded in 2001. That led, in my opinion, to the ultimate collapse in 2007.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can understand that. Tell me a little bit about, you know, what you think were pivotal factors. What did you notice as red flags with that change of leadership?
Well, you know, a couple of things. One is all the leaders at Merrill were real people persons. They were leaders that loved being around people. They related to all types of people. They had a real, you know, ethical and a moral compass. And they also understood that we were in the client business. And what I saw changing after 2001 is a lot of the client businesses were downsized, de-emphasized, the profitability had eroded, and therefore to be competitive and to keep up with Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, the new CEO, Stan O'Neill, jumped into these highly toxic subprime mortgages. He levered the balance sheet to 35 to 1, and people stopped talking about clients and they started talking more about counterparties.
Interesting. And isn't that, you know, pretty early at the same time, we started seeing all of the major investment companies, and I think including Merrill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, giving one type of recommendation to their clients, but internally being very critical of those particular stocks.
Well, I think that's right. And, you know, when I was at Merrill, you always had the potential of conflict between investment banking and research and or, you know, private client business. And we did a very good job of, you know, keeping those things in check and balance. But what I saw happening in 2000 is the traders were making so much money that they were gaining control of the firms. And it was really their businesses, which were not the client businesses. It was more the proprietary trading that ended up being emphasized.
So you left in 2001. Besides writing this book, what else have you been involved in?
Well, I did some investments on my own, private equity, and then I ended up buying Sugarbush Resort in Vermont, which is a ski, golf, full-year recreational resort, and that's actually ended up being my second career. So I'm spending nearly 80% of my time running that business. I'm on a few other boards, but this is really a fun career.
Yeah. Did you buy that from George McGovern by chance?
No, we bought it from.
I'm sure you're familiar with this old Secretary of Labor story. About if he had owned such a thing in in Vermont. He went bankrupt owning such a thing that you own in Vermont. And he said, I really needed that experience before I served in the Senate to see what government does to business, because I think I would have had a different Senate career. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
I am. And, there's the great saying in the ski business, the easiest way to make $1 million is to start with several $1 million.
And that can be said about so many businesses. Absolutely. So that's fascinating. And so you spend a lot more time in Vermont than in New York these days.
I really do. As I said, I'm on 4 financial boards, so it keeps my toe in the water, and I love, still being reminded of my old business. But I'm up here in Vermont. It's a second career. There are wonderful people up here, and it's been a great life for the last 11 years.
Yeah, sounds like it. So where can people get your book?
I'm sorry?
Where can people get the book?
Oh, right now it's available on Amazon.com. We have a hardback and a paperback, and we should have a Kindle up there now or very shortly. And then I self-published, so I started that way, but I have had some contacts from other publishers. So in the future, we might be in some of the bookstores as well. But right now, Amazon.com is the easiest way to get it.
And you chose to self-publish, why? Because you didn't have the patience to deal with the bureaucracy, or because you wanted to maintain editorial control and was hoping that it would catch on? And what was your reasoning?
Sure. Well, really, yes, 2 reasons. One, I knew I was a new author, and so I didn't know how easy it would be to find somebody to actually be interested in the book. And secondly, yes, I wanted editorial control. I didn't want it turned around so it was only the sensationalism of the final years. I wanted to write it so it was a sequential history that really talked about the many, many good years, the innovations, and not just the final few years. Yep.
What year did it get founded again?
I'm sorry?
What year did it get founded again?
Oh, it was founded by Charlie Merrill January 6, 1914, so it just turned 100 years old a few weeks ago.
Okay. And who was it in your family that was involved in the beginning?
That was my father, and, I came along late in life. He was 56, but he started with Merrill early on in 1916, and he became an early partner. And then Merrill actually left the securities business in the 1930s and focused on the grocery business, started Safeway stores. It was my father in 1939 that convinced Charlie to come back into the business, and together they came up with the strategy of bringing Wall Street to Main Street and changing many of the ways that Wall Street practiced in those days, which I think has some lessons for today.
Win Smith has been our guest here today. Interesting book, Catching Lightning in a Bottle, How Merrill Lynch Revolutionized the Financial World. Great guest. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, Kevin. It's an honor being on your show.
I want to encourage people to go to smith-merrillhistory.com. Smith-merrillhistory.com, or you just go to Amazon and put in Winthrop Smith, and I'm sure it'll pop up pretty high. Thanks again, sir.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate it.
You bet. When we come back, much more for you. Do want to remind you, best content here shows up over there at usdailyreview.com, and you're listening to The Price of Business.
It's been getting so hard living with the things